We are now more than ever tethered to our devices. But what does being tethered mean exactly? Well, it comes from the social psychologist Sherry Turkle, who explains this concept as us being heavily reliant and connected to our devices. She explains this concept in her work Always On, Always On You, The Tethered Self. She is primarily worried about our deepening connections with our technologies and how they seem to be taking over our different facets of communicating. So much so that it has become the new norm of communicating with other people. This has also been a very interesting topic for me to tackle because I also feel like, in some ways, the ways we are socializing with our friends, our families, and everyone around us is being dictated by our devices. We're becoming overly reliant on our devices. And this is even more applicable in the current time. But why? On the 11th of March 2020, the World Health Organization officially declared COVID-19 as a pandemic. Soon after, many things became locked down and heavily restricted. School campuses closed their doors to students, restaurants were forced to close, and gyms were shut down. Many people lost their jobs, and those who were able to keep them had to work from home. This entire situation brought forth an immediate and necessary surge of the internet and our usage to our connective devices. It was seemingly made necessary because of the heavy restrictions much of the world faced. So I wanted to get a better understanding specifically of this aspect in the rise of the internet and the use of our devices, specifically our mobile phones. So I decided to ask a Queen's University student about his experiences with technology and phone during this pandemic time.
I feel like since the whole pandemic really took priority over the media and all these precautions were put in place, all these safety measures, I feel like my usage of my phone, my computer, and stuff like that has really gone up because currently my phone is pretty much the only method I have to communicate with people not living with me or not nearby that I can see in person. Um, and a lot of the things that we could do before, we could meet up with people, we could talk with people through classes, stuff like that, really disappeared once the pandemic really started. And so I resorted to using my phone as a method to talk to people, as a method to communicate with friends, communicate with family, stay in touch with the media, stay in touch with news. And so because of that, it's like compared to before the pandemic, my usage has really gone up, like noticeably, because it's the only method that I have and the only means of communication with people that I'm not in the vicinity of. I find myself to be way more active on my digital devices because currently, as I said, like there's not much to do outside anymore. In times where you could go out with friends, go get lunch, stay in a park, hang out with lots of people in classes, studying, that's not really an option anymore. It's not that it's not done as much. It's just the option is almost just disappeared, and so a lot of the entertainment does come from staying at home, watching YouTube videos, staying at home, watching shows, playing on the computer, playing with friends, playing on the phone, and a lot of stuff like that. Because so many things that were supposed to happen and were just outside, like concerts, festivals, all that, just completely canceled, just to try to keep COVID where it is and to try to diminish it. And so, yeah, like I personally find that I rely on my computer and on my phone a lot to play games, call with friends. I have plenty of games on my phone that I pretty much play daily. And so, because of that, it's just that becomes the source of entertainment and the source of just at any point, well, what can I do right now? I'm done studying, I'll play a game, I'll watch a video, I'll do some daily quests on the games. But it's a very big, like, in comparison to previous years. I did not use my phone as much for, especially for entertainment. The only people that I really got to see here in person are people who either lived nearby or who came to visit for one day, saw them for one day, they're gone. And so just because of the pandemic, it made, like, I feel like everybody made a switch to online stuff. Like I use things like Messenger, things like Snapchat, so much more often than I used to, just because that is the only way I can communicate with people who don't live here in Kingston and who don't live nearby here in Kingston, because I have friends who live like about 20 kilometers away, and I just have no way to really contact them because they're no longer getting like rides to school. And so the just the effects of the whole like restrictions and all these things of, oh, you can't see people or don't even bother coming to campus, school's online, it made people just try to restrict how many people they're seeing, like outside of their own households. And what that left is the only means of communication with other people ended up being online, through social media, through games, through people who still use Skype, through anything. And it was, yeah, like I feel like you, for me specifically, I feel like I use like social media and like texting apps a lot more often than I used to. I feel like, I don't know if like it certainly is a dependency. I don't really know if it's an addiction, because it's almost, I mean, granted, giving the definition of an addiction, it is something that we pretty much can't live without, just because of the environment and the situation we're in right now. Because let's say I don't want to depend on my phone, I don't want to use my computer as often. Well, good luck studying, good luck staying in your classes. um, it's just the fact that everything is online now, texting people, contacting people, just communicating with anybody in general, emailing your professor because you don't understand something, getting an email back from your professor. It's just, it created this dependency on the internet, on just devices, just because there's nothing else we can use. It's like I can't go to my professor's house and ask him like, "Hi, assignment 2, can you explain this to me?" Like it's ridiculous. And so it's like it's an it's an addiction and it's a dependency, but it's necessary because of the way the world is functioning right now. Honestly, I feel like my physical activity has been more affected by schoolwork than it has than the pandemic. Because a lot of the things that I did to keep active, like go outside for walks, go for runs, go for hikes, uh, they haven't really been affected by the pandemic as much, because I like to do them alone anyway. So, and I can still do those right now because there's no restrictions on those. I feel like the schoolwork, once it kicked in, that was pretty much the trigger that not really turned off, but certainly lowered my like physical activity, because over the break, over the 5 months that I was back in Toronto while the pandemic started, I pretty much stayed home. I went outside just for walks and stuff, um, and the physical activity that I did was pretty much daily. Is I tried to work out, I tried to keep eating healthy, but once I got here and school started and all the assignments started piling up and all the lectures, all the work, all the notes, it really, that was what affected the, not even the like the amount, but just the frequency when I could do something physical. Because whenever there was an assignment or whenever there was a lecture, something new posted, something new mark, an old mark comes in, it really affected my like not my habits, but like my daily schedule in general. And included in that daily schedule would be physical activity, which was the pretty much the first thing to be kicked off.
Much of what Steph has told me in our interview aligns with the academic research being done in this specific field. In their work, Janssen et al. Finds that there is an increased internet addiction due to COVID-19 in China. They found that 46.8% of their subjects told them they had a higher dependency on the internet, 16.6% of which have reported spending longer hours on the internet. Severe dependence on the internet rose by 23% since the pandemic began. Research has also shown that, much like what Steph has said, our smartphones have begun to become, in some ways, used as a way to socialize in the absence of actually being able to socialize with others. John Elhai and al. Found that problematic smartphone usage can be linked as a way to manage the anxiety and social isolation caused by the pandemic. The research looking at the relationship of smartphone use and sedentary behavior in Spain found that there has been an increased smartphone usage and an increase in sedentary behaviors. They found that moderate to vigorous physical exercise decreased by 92% in Spain post-pandemic. They also noticed that there's a rise in sitting behavior, which increased by 3.3 hours a day during the quarantine. Consequently, they found that people have begun to use their smartphones increasingly during the quarantine, at about an additional 2 hours a day. Much like Sherry Turkle explains in our argument about being tethered to our devices, it seems much more that in our pandemic reality, it has allowed us to see the relationship to our devices very clearly. We are more than ever very dependent on our devices, and we depend on them, especially now, to survive.